Good morning, grade 9s, and welcome back to Quarantine English with Mr. Fouché. Today we'll be doing an activity in your textbook, so you can take that out so long, and you can turn it to page 182. 182. There you will find extra activity 1, which is a question that is separated into two parts. You've got the first one where they give you a big paragraph, and you need to change the words in brackets so that they fit the context of your sentence. Then the second part is more of a column A to column B type of question. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, we'll do question 1 of this activity. So for this one, you do not need to write out the entire paragraph. It would take too long for an online lesson. So you just need to write down each word in brackets, like I have done here on the board. Then you can, next to it, write down the answer or the correct form of each word. They are all verbs. It's something you can use as a little tip. So we'll probably be looking for tenses. We'll be looking for singular and plural things. Perhaps there are some infinitives and finite verbs. We'll check all of these and change them accordingly. So I'll read a sentence out of this big paragraph, and if there's a word in brackets to change, we'll change it. So let's get started. The first sentence is the following. The first paper made in China in the year 105 AD. Now here we are given a time. 105 AD, that's in the past. This is how I know my verb needs to be in the past. So that's one thing I already know. The second thing is the first paper. It is singular. My subject is one thing. So I need to use an auxiliary verb to help my main verb indicate that something is singular and it's in the past. And of course, the answer is was made. Okay, as I'm explaining this, try and do these in front of time so that you can have something to mark in a sense. It's best to attempt these things by yourself first before just writing down the answers. But that's just a tip from Mr. Fouché over here. So let's get on to the next sentence, which is where our next word will be. The material used for the paper be probably the bark of the mulberry tree. Whenever you find a word like be and they ask you to change it into the correct form, it's probably going to be an auxiliary verb. So you need to look for something that indicates what your subject is, singular or plural, and in what time you are. We already know that the sentence, thanks to the entire paragraph, is past tense. So we are going to go to the past, but let's see if it's was or were. The paper. No, wrong one. The material. The material, it's one material, therefore it was singular. Okay, let's get on to the next sentence. The paper mold on bamboo strips. Now, I know mold can be a noun and a verb, but as you can hear, it wouldn't fit as a noun. Therefore, I know it's a verb. It needs to be an action. Now let's have a look. We need to check if it's singular or plural or in what sense we are, or both in this case. So the paper, one paper, it's singular. We also know it's going to be past tense thanks to my previous sentences that I know are in the past. So again, we go with was, which helps my main verb, mold. And I have to add ed here for it to show past tense. Was molded. Okay, let's continue to the next one. So here we've got two words that will change in the following sentence. China hold the monopoly on the art of make paper for 500 years. Now here again, we do get an idea of time. They held this thing for 500 years. They do not have it anymore. So it is a duration of time, but all of it was in the past. Okay, so we still go to the past, thanks to our 500 years part that helps us with this. So, China held the monopoly. Held. Now let's continue. Held the monopoly on the art of making here. Making paper. Okay. Now, in this case, this is not what you would refer to as a verb. It's a gerund. It's a word that looks like a verb in the continuous tense, but it's not something someone is doing in the actual sentence. they are referring to an activity. This is called a gerund. So if I tell you that running is good for your health, in that sentence, no one is running. I'm just saying that that act is good for your health. Okay? It's always followed by an ing. That's how you would know what it is. But you do need to check context of your sentence to know if it's a gerund or just a continuous verb. Let's continue to the next one. We've got from China. Yeah, we are the correct one, yes. From China, paper making spread to Japan. And from there into Central Asia. We only have one word to change here, and it's spread. And this actually showcases how irregular verbs can sometimes work. Sometimes the word just stays the same. So spread stays spread. Even if it goes to the past, it doesn't matter. So spread is the same. It's very similar to the word read. If you read something in the present tense and it becomes something in the past, you will say read, but you spell it R-E-A-D as well. This means you need context to know what tense you are in. Let's continue. We are now at the sentence pretty much in the middle of your paragraph. From there it bring to Egypt. From there it bring to Egypt. This is a great example of why people use passive voice. Let's explain this quickly. So here, the answer, I need to show, first of all, it is one thing, so it's going to be was. It needs to be past because we know the rest of our entire paragraph was past. So, was brought. Okay. But you will notice that it is not really important as to who brought it. Okay? Otherwise, you would have used an active sentence. So if that part is not important, then you will see people use passive voice. If you just want to refer to it getting to Egypt, it doesn't matter who brought it, because people probably don't even know who brought it. It's an unknown. So if you ever have something that is unknown and you don't want to focus on that unknown thing, the passive voice is the better voice to use for your sentence. Okay, let's continue. The Moors introduced paper to Europe. The Moors introduced paper to Europe. So here we are going to have to go back into the past. So introduce just simply becomes introduced. Okay, it's a good and simple one there. Now, to continue, the first paper mill established in Spain. Again, first paper mill, it's one thing. We already know it is also in the past, thanks to the context of my entire paragraph. So, was established. I think you know why was is used, because it shows you singular past. Okay, try and remember that. If you get that and you understand it, it becomes really, really simple. So let's continue to the next one. The European paper makers use mainly rags, manufacture paper. And you can hear this sounds very fragmented. So the European paper makers used. I know it needs to go to the past because of the rest of my paragraph. So used is the correct form of use. But now there's another word to change. So the European paper makers used mainly rags, and here we've got to manufacture. To, I'll just write it down like this. Ran out of space a little bit, but you should be able to see it. It's to manufacture, and this is what you call an infinitive verb. Okay? You will always know it's an infinitive verb if you have to add the word to in front of it for it to make sense. Okay? It's also very important never to add, in this case, an adverb between to and your main verb. Okay, because if you do that, you are splitting your infinitive. It's bad language. Okay, so never do that. But let's continue. So now we are getting to which sentence? Here we go. We are almost done. As a result of the shortage of rags, paper makers try to find a a substitute for it. Okay, now we know we need to go to the past, so it's quite simple what to do here. Try just becomes tried. Okay. Now we get on to the next sentence. Here we go. In 1798, the first machine made to produce paper. So here we've got one machine, so it's singular. We also know it needs to be past tense, so it just becomes was made. Almost identical rules-wise as the first sentence, or the first word you had to change. Okay, let's continue on. Made to produce paper. Eventually, wood pulp used to make paper. So this is our second last sentence. Wood pulp, which is one entity. So again, we've got was used. And now we get onto our last sentence, which is slightly a bit of a tricky one if you were using the context to indicate your tense. So here we've got today most paper made from wood cellulose. So here you might think, oh, it must be was made, right? Not in this case, because we actually have a word which is today, which means in recent times, at this very moment in the present. So because it's present tense, today most paper is made. Okay, is made. And there you go, this is question 1. It's quite simple, it's not too tricky. The main idea when you get any question like this is always to look for context, which means the little bits of information around your answer. Are there words that will tell you what time you are in? What year something happened, for how long something happened. If you have these things, it's very simple to answer these types of questions. But let's continue on to our second part of this activity. And you might even learn a new figure of speech, one that's not used very often. It's very similar to alliteration. We'll get to it now. So in this question, they ask you, in the columns below, the figures of speech and their explanations are jumbled up. Rearrange them so the correct figure of speech and explanation match. It's quite simple. What I have done here, in order to save some time, is I numbered them in my book. You can do the same now with a pencil. However, please erase it after you have done this activity. Okay, because if you keep this pencil mark in your book, you know, the next person who gets it will get the answers and it won't work. Okay, so what you can do is just number each part here, and then you can number your facts if you want to, and just connect them. Obviously, at the end of this lesson, I would like you to write down these definitions in your book so that you have them with you in an activity. Okay, so you will have to write this down after the lesson. You can see it as a little bit of homework, unfortunately, but it'll help you, definitely. So let's get started. I'm going to list the figure of speech itself, the name of it, and we'll do a slight discussion and see which one fits where. So, alliteration, as you know, it's when you take lots of consonant sounds and you repeat them in a certain phrase, usually with 2 or more examples of it in a certain verse. I'm saying verse because it's used very often in poetry. So here, let's have a look. The best one to fit with that, or that description, is the second definition. So, the repetition of similar, usually initial, consonant sounds. For example, sing a song of sixpence. So there, the sound of the S is being repeated constantly. So that is alliteration. You can mix or connect those two. So it's the second definition. Now we get on to assonance. Now this one, slightly similar to alliteration, but now we are not getting consonant sounds, we are getting vowel sounds. These are A, E, I, O, and U. If you find them being repeated, usually inside a word, then you will know it is a vowel that is being repeated, therefore assonance. The best one, or best example of assonance in these descriptions is, let's just have a look where I wrote it down. There we go. Where is it? Here we go. So it is the rhyming of vowels within 2 or more words, as in the nursery rhyme, rain, rain, go away, come again another day. This is the third explanation that they give you. So basically, your figure of speech number 2 will mix with your explanation 3. Or connect, not mix. 3 is the new one that I was telling you about. It's called consonants. It is extremely similar to alliteration, okay? But in this case, it's also a consonant sound being repeated, but it can even be inside a word. Usually, it's not more than 2 words being alliterated. In this case, you've got consonants, okay? So let's give you an example. One that I know is easy peasy lemon squeezy. There the S is being repeated, even though it's inside the word now. So this is referred to as consonants. Okay. The best one for this example is actually the very first one, which would not have surprised me if you wrote down the first definition as alliteration, but it's actually going to fit best with consonants because pitter patter is definitely an example of consonants. So their definition here, the repetition of the same consonant 2 or more times in short succession. As you can hear, it sounds very similar to alliteration, but don't worry about it for now. Now we get on to 4, which is personification. Let's see what best fits personification. It's one you should know quite well by now. So you give inanimate objects a human quality or even animals. And you will see that it is the second last definition which best fits this figure of speech, giving animals things and ideas human characteristics, like the flowers dance in the breeze. Okay? Now we get to your second last figure of speech, which is onomatopoeia. As you know, these are words that are spelt in or said in a very similar way as the actual sounds that they represent. So here we've got the best one for it is the last explanation. The use of words to recreate sounds they describe. For example, the tick-tock of the clock. Okay. And then the last one to do is just the pun. It's probably my favorite one to use. And it is the only definition that's remaining, a play on words that sounds identical or similar to create humor. For example, 7 days without food makes 1 week. If you understand what that means, 7 days in a week, but the ability to not be strong because you're not eating, you feel weak. Yes, I had to explain that just to make sure you know what it means. That is called a pun, used very often by William Shakespeare in all of his plays. Okay, grade 9, that is it for this lesson. This is all you need to do for today. I will see you in the next lesson, which is now next week, since you only have 1 lesson a week. So thank you very much for tuning in to Quarantine English with Mr. Fouché. I'll see you next time and stay safe.